Okay, so we are going live and we are ready and rearing to go. Thank you for showing up today. For those of you who are hanging about, we are continuing chapter 37 of the Count of Monte Cristo. What we've learned is that Franz's best friend Albert has been captured by Luigi Vampa and ransomed for 4,000 piastres, which is like $6. And so Franz and runs to the Count of Monte Cristo and says, "Hey, can you give me some help?" And the Count says, "Well, duh, of course I can give you some help because I set this whole thing up because I'm in control of everything." And so the Count of Monte Cristo and Franz have entered the catacombs of Rome, and have just entered the home base of Luigi Vampa and his other dudes, his enforcers and stuff. So we just entered this big. We've gone through the catacombs. It's beautiful, and we are just about to enter this big, or we just entered this big space where Luigi Vampa and his cronies are hanging about. So the last line was, shoop-a-doop-a-doo. A man was seated with his elbow leaning on the column and was reading with his back turned to the arcades, through the openings of which newcomers contemplated him. This was the chief of the band, Luigi Vampa. All right, it is 9:30 right now, and we are just about to start. So here we go.
This was the chief of the band, Luigi Vampa.
Around him, and in groups according to their fancy, lying in their mantles or with their backs against a sort of stone bench which went all around the columbarium, were to be seen 20 brigands or more, each having his carbine within reach. At the other end, silent, scarcely visible, like a shadow, was a sentinel who was walking up and down before a grotto, which was only distinguishable because in that spot the darkness seemed more dense than elsewhere. Okay, it looked pretty good. That actually looked a little shy. It's fine. Actually, it's good. Cool. All right, we're about to lose script. Get everything all set up, and here we go.
Darkness seemed more dense than elsewhere.
When the Count thought Franz had gazed sufficiently on this picturesque tableau, he raised his finger to his lips to warn him to be silent. Ooh. That's a little too slow. Sometimes you do need to give gravitas, and sometimes you just need to read the words. Okay, here we go. Pop. Ooh, that was quite the pop. We are going to put on our cherry chapstick. Much better. Okay, here we go.
Darkness seemed more dense than elsewhere.
When the Count thought Franz had gazed sufficiently on this picturesque tableau, he raised his finger to his lips to warn him to be silent, and, ascending the 3 steps which led to the corridor of the columbarium, entered the chamber by the middle arcade, and advanced towards Vampa, who was so intent on the book before him that he did not hear the noise of his footsteps. I think I flubbed that line. Let's see.
And advanced towards Vampa, who was so intent on the book before him that he did not hear the noise of his footsteps.
Nope, we rocked it. Okay, good. Sometimes it just feels flubbish, but you never trust yourself, is what I say. Never trust yourself. Go back and check.
That he did not hear the noise of his footsteps.
"Who comes there?" cried the sentinel, who was less abstracted, and who saw by the lamplight a shadow approaching his chief. At this challenge, Vampa rose quickly, drawing at the same moment a pistol from his girdle. In a moment, all the bandits were on their feet, and 20 carbines were leveled at the Count. "Well," he said in a perfectly calm voice. Well, my dear Vampa, it appears to me that you receive a friend with a great deal of ceremony."
Were leveled at the Count.
Well, we're still trying to find the voice for the Count. Not that we haven't got it. It's just there's something we're still playing with his countenance. Something we might go back in and fix later. But we'll see. It is a 54-hour book. Sometimes you just have to go with what you got.
Were on their feet, and 20 carbines were leveled at the Count.
Well, he said in a voice perfectly calm, and no muscle of his countenance disturbed. Well, my dear Vampa, it appears to me that you receive a friend with a great deal of ceremony. Ground arms, exclaimed the chief with an imperative Ground arms. Your pardon, Your Excellency, but I was so far from expecting the honor of a visit that I did not really recognize you. He's a bit of a bandit. Here we go.
Receive a friend with a great deal of ceremony.
Ground arms, exclaimed the chief, with an imperative sign of the hand, while with the other he took off his hat respectively. Then, he took off his hat respectfully, not respectively.
The hand, while with the other.
Let's just start again. Start out over again. There we go.
Receive a friend with a great deal of ceremony.
Ground arms, exclaimed the chief, with an imperative sign of the hand. Nope. Ground arms, exclaimed the chief, with an imperative sign of the hand, while with the other he took off his hat respectfully. Then, turning toward the singular personage who had caused this scene, he said, "Your pardon, Your Excellency, but I was so far from expecting the honor of a visit that I did not really recognize you." It seems that your memory is equally short in everything, Vampa, said the Count, and that not only do you
In everything, Vampa. Sign of the hand. Nope. Ground up. Your pardon, Your. The Count.
Okay, we're just cutting and pasting so that everything works when we play it back later. We're a little thirsty today. It's okay. It just seems like that kind of Wednesday. Here we go.
Memory is equally short in everything, Vampa, said the Count.
And that not only do you forget people's faces, but also the conditions you make with them. Them, not him. Something so weird about this manuscript. Whoops. Shook. Delete you. Yes. Okay, here we go.
Memory is equally short in everything, Vampa, said the Count.
And that not only do you forget people's faces, but also the conditions you make with them. What conditions have I forgotten, Your Excellency? Inquired the bandit, with the air of a man who, having committed an error, is anxious to repair it. Was it not agreed, asked the Count, that not only my person, but also that of my friends should be respected by you? And how have I broken the treaty, Your Excellency? You have this evening carried off and conveyed hither. Ooh.
And how have I broken the treaty, Your Excellency?
You have this very evening carried off and conveyed hither the Viscount Albert de Morcerf. You have this evening carried off and conveyed hither the Viscount de Morcerf. Well, continued the Count in a tone that made Franz shudder, this young gentleman is one of my friends. This young gentleman lodges in the same hotel as myself. This young gentleman has been up and down the Corso for 8 hours in my private carriage, and yet, I repeat to you, you have carried him off and conveyed him hither, and, added the Count, taking the letter from his pocket, you have set a ransom on him, as if he were an utter stranger. Why did you not tell me all this? You, inquired the brigand chief, turning toward his men, who all retreated before his look. Why have you caused me thus to fail in my words towards a gentleman like the Count, who has all our lives in his hands? By heavens, if I thought one of you knew that the young gentleman was the friend of his Excellency, I would blow his brains out with my own hand. Well, said the Count, turning towards Franz, I told you there was some mistake in this. Are you not alone? Asked Vampa with uneasiness. I'm with the person to whom this letter was addressed, and to whom I desired to prove that Luigi Vampa was a man of his word. Come, Your Excellency, the Count added, turning towards Franz. Here is Luigi Vampa, who will himself express to you his deep regret at the mistake he has committed. Franz approached, the chief advancing several steps to meet him. "Welcome among us, Your Excellency," he said to him. "You heard what the Count just said, and also my reply. Let me add that I would not for the
You heard what the Count just said, and also my reply.
And also my reply. Sugar, 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 do-do-do-do-do. Dooby-dooby-dooby-doo-doo-doo. So my reply, where am I? There we are.
And also my reply.
Let me add that I would not for 4,000 piastres at which I had fixed your friend's ransom, that this had happened. But, said Franz, looking round him uneasily, where is the Count? Viscount. Where is the Count? 1, 2, 3. 3, that's a magic number. All right, here we go.
Franz, looking round him uneasily.
Where is the Viscount? I do not see him. Nothing has happened to him, I hope, said the Count. Nothing has happened to him, I hope. Here we go.
I do not see him.
Nothing has happened to him, I hope, said the Count frowningly. The prisoner is there, replied Vampa, pointing to the hollow space in front of which the bandit was on guard. I will go myself and tell him he is free. The chief went towards the place he had pointed out as Albert's prison, and Franz and the Count followed him. What is the prisoner doing? Inquired Vampa of the sentinel. Excuse me, Captain, replied the sentry. I do not know. For the last hour I have not heard him, sir. Come in, Your Excellency, said Vampa. The Count and Franz ascended 7 or 8 steps after the chief, who drew back a bolt and opened a door. Then, by the gleam of a lamp similar to that which lighted the columbarium, just wanted to make sure that's what that word is, columbarium. Columbary? No, it's columbarium.
The door.
I'm going to go back to then. Go back to then. All right, here we go.
Back a bolt and opened a door.
Then, by the gleam of a lamp, similar to that which lighted the columbarium, Albert was to be seen wrapped up in a cloak which one of the bandits had lent him, lying in a corner in profound slumber. Come, said the Count, smiling with his own peculiar smile. Not so bad for a man who was to be shot at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. Vampa looked at Albert with a kind of admiration. He was not insensible to such a proof of courage. You are right, Your Excellency, he said. This must be one of your friends. Then, going to Albert, he touched him on the shoulder, saying, Will Your Excellency please to awaken? Albert stretched out his arms, rubbed his eyelids, and opened his eyes. Oh, he said, it is you, Captain. You should have allowed me to sleep. I had such a delightful dream. I was dancing at the gallop at Torlonia's with the Countess G. Then he drew his watch from his pocket that he might see how time sped. 1:30 only, he said. Why the devil did you rouse me at this hour? To tell you that you are free, Your Excellency. My dear fellow, replied Albert with perfect ease of mind, remember for the future Napoleon's maxim, never awake me but for bad news. Never awake me but for bad news. Remember, Albert's kind of a surfer dude. He's just chill, flirting. Let's get it on. Yes, I know there weren't surfer dudes in the early 1800s in France and Italy, but, you know. He's just got that long-haired thing going. So, here we go.
Hello, replied Albert with perfect ease of mind.
Remember, for the future, Napoleon's maxim, never awaken me but for bad news. If you had let me sleep on, I should have finished my gallop and have been grateful to you all my life. So then, they've paid my ransom. No, Your Excellency. Well, and how am I free? A person to whom I can refuse nothing has come to demand you. Come hither. Yes, either. Really? Then that person is a most amiable person. Albert looked around and perceived Franz. Albert looked around and perceived Franz. Let's see how we doing. This is going to be a lot of stuff. Okay, here we go. We're just checking to see how long this is going on because we're going to be a little bit short today. But I would love to get this chapter done. It's already in at 33 minutes. I think it's going to be a 45er, but we'll see. We've got another 15 to go.
And that person is a most amiable person.
Albert looked around and perceived Franz. What? He said. Is it you, my dear Franz, whose devotion and friendship are thus displayed? No, not I, replied Franz, but our neighbor, the Count of Monte Cristo. Oh, my dear Count, said Albert gaily. My dear Count, said Albert. I'm going to skip gaily because it's just... Oh, Albert said gaily. No, we're not putting that in there. Here we go.
But our neighbor, the Count of Monte Cristo.
Oh, my dear Count, said Albert, arranging his cravat and wristbands. You were really most kind, and I hope you will consider me as under eternal obligations to you, in the first place for the carriage, and in the next for this visit. He put out his hand to the Count, who shuddered as he gave his own, but who nevertheless did give it. The bandit gazed on this scene with amazement. He was evidently accustomed to see his prisoners tremble before him, and yet here was one whose temperament was not for a moment wash. And yet, pop, six, squish.
Before him, and yet the bandit.
We're going to start at the bandit. We'll just do that whole sentence again. All right, here we go.
But who nevertheless did give it.
The bandit gazed on this scene with amazement. He was evidently accustomed to see his prisoners tremble before him, and yet here was one whose gay temperament was not for a moment altered. Now, I don't like gay temperament.
But who nevertheless did give it.
The bandit gazed on this scene with amazement. He was evidently accustomed to see his prisoners tremble before him, and yet here was one whose temperament was not for a moment altered. As for Franz, he was enchanted at the way in which Albert had sustained the national honor in presence of the bandit. My dear Albert, he said, if you will make haste, we shall yet have time to finish the night at Torlonia's. You may conclude your interrupted gallop.
If you will.
Let's start again. That's just too many breaths, but we're doing dialogue, so breath is just fine. You know why breath is fine? Because AI doesn't breathe. Here we go.
Honor in presence of the bandit.
My dear Albert, he said, if you will make haste, we shall yet have time to finish the night at Torlonia's. You may conclude your interrupted gallop, so that you will owe no ill will. Okay. That's certainly... Oh, that is certainly cold today, but we're fine. We're fine. We're thirsty. We're just not getting words, but that's fine. Here we go.
Honor in presence of the bandit.
Oh. Here we go.
Honor in presence of the bandit.
My dear Albert, he said, if you will make haste, we shall yet have time to finish the night at Torlonia's. You may conclude your interrupted gallop, so that you will owe no ill will to Signor... Oh, did I have to hit my desk at that moment? Keep your hands off the desk.
Honor in presence of the bandit.
My dear Albert, he said, if you will make haste, we shall yet have time to finish the night at Torlonia's. You may conclude your interrupted gallop, so that you will owe no ill will to Signor Luigi, who has indeed throughout this whole affair acted like a gentleman. You were decidedly right, and we may reach the palazzo by 2 o'clock. Signor Luigi, continued Albert, is there any formality to fulfill before I leave your excellency? None, sir, replied the bandit. You are as free as air. Well, then, a happy and merry life to you. Come, gentlemen, come. And Albert, followed by Franz and the Count, descended the staircase, crossed the square chamber where stood all the bandits, hat in hand. Peppino, said the brigand chief, give me the torch. What are you going to do? Inquired the Count. I will show you the way back myself, said the captain. That is the least honor I can render to your excellency. And taking the lighted torch from the hands of the herdsman, he preceded his guests, not as a servant who performs an act of civility, but like a king who precedes ambassadors. But like a king who precedes ambassadors. There's too big a breath there. Okay, we're going to start that again, and we're going to take a lot more presence of our breathing during this.
Is the least honor I can render to your excellency.
And taking the lighted torch from the hands of the herdsman, he preceded his guests, not as a servant who performs an act of civility, but like a king who precedes ambassadors. On reaching the door, he bowed. On reaching the door, he bowed. On reaching the door, he bowed.
But like a king who precedes ambassadors.
On reaching the door, he bowed. And now, your excellency, he added, allow me to repeat my apologies, and I hope you will not entertain any resentment at what has occurred. No, my dear Vampa, replied the Count. Besides, you compensate for your mistakes in so gentlemanly a way that one almost feels obliged. There he is.
Besides, my dear Vampa, replied the Count. Besides,
you compensate for your mistakes in so gentlemanly a way that one almost feels obliged to you for having committed them. God damn it. This goddamn committed them. Besides, I'm going to take that besides out and redo it.
my dear Vampa, replied the Count.
Besides, you compensate for... Just a wicked, wicked day in the studio. I think we're going to close this out pretty quick. We're going to close this out because we have a bunch of emails to write and a bunch of auditions to do. So, this is just not a great day for Luigi Vampa. Yes, to me, yes. I'm curious to know. Let's find a good spot. There we go. The horse is on at great speed. That's a perfect place to stop. Okay.
My dear Vampa, replied the Count.
Besides, you compensate for your mistakes in so gentlemanly a way that one almost feels obliged to you for having committed them. Gentlemen, added the chief, turning towards the young man, perhaps the offer may not appear very tempting to you, but if you should ever feel inclined to pay me a second visit, wherever my
Appear very tempting to you, but if you added the chief, turning towards the young man.
Perhaps the offer may not appear very tempting to you, but if you should ever feel inclined to pay me a second visit, wherever I may be, you shall be welcome. Franz and Albert bowed. The Count went out first, then Albert. Franz paused for a moment. Has your excellency anything to ask me? Said Vampa with a smile. Yes, I have, replied Franz. I'm curious to know what work you were perusing with so much attention as we entered. Caesar's Commentaries, said the bandit. It is my favorite work. Well, are you coming? Asked Albert. Yes, replied Franz, here I am. And he, in turn, left the caves. They advanced to the plain. Ah, your pardon, said Albert, turning around. Will you allow me, Captain?
Pardon, said Albert, turning around.
Will you allow me, Captain? And he lighted his cigar at Vampa's torch. Now, my dear Count, he said, let us on with all the speed we may. I am enormously anxious to finish my night at the Duke of Bracciano's. That's pretty funny. Okay.
Enormously anxious to finish my night at the Duke of Bracciano's.
They found the carriage where they had left it. The Count said a word in Arabic to Ali, and the horses went on at great speed. Okay. That was pretty good. I mean, we only cut about 10 minutes, but we only really worked for about 15. So that's, that is a 1.5 order, and I think that's going to do it for today's stream. I think I am a little bit burnt out, and that just happens sometimes. So when we get back, we are going to the Duke of Bracciano's, where Albert's going to tell his tale. Oh, we only have that much left. We have a page left to finish the chapter. Okay, we're going to go ahead and finish the chapter. See if I just scrolled a little bit more. Here we go. Okay. Yeah.
Went on at great speed.
It was just 2:00 by Albert's watch when the two friends entered into the dancing room. Their return was quite an event, but as they entered together, all uneasiness on Albert's account ceased instantly. Madam, said the Viscount de Morcerf, advancing towards the Countess, yesterday you were so condescending as to promise me a gallop. I am rather late in claiming this gracious promise, but here is my friend whose character for veracity you well know, and he will assure you the delay arose from no fault of mine. And as at this moment the orchestra gave the signal for the waltz, Albert put his...
Delay arose from no fault of mine.
And as at this moment the orchestra gave the signal. And at this moment the orchestra gave the signal for the waltz. As at this moment. Okay, here we go. And as at this moment the orchestra gave the signal for the waltz, Albert put his arm round the waist of the Countess and disappeared with her in the whirl of dancers. In the meanwhile, Franz was considering the singular shudder that had been passed over the Count of Monte Cristo at the moment when he had been, in some sort, forced to give his hand to Albert. Excellent. All right. Good. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to mark down how long this sucker is, and we're going to go clean it up. And then we've got a whole bunch of other things we're going to have to do today instead of this particular stream. Don't hit the microphone. And anyway, now that we are finished with this chapter, we will start chapter 38. The rendezvous will be first thing tomorrow morning. So I hope you had a few good moments and a few good laughs. Maybe learned a few things that you didn't know before about Luigi Vampa and his reading habits. And we shall see you first thing tomorrow morning.